taken his place. Anyway, well, thanks for visiting with me. You have been on my list of people, because every time I go, I do a veteran for the Veterans Show. Somebody says, "Well, have you talked to General Miller yet?" And I said, "Well, no, I've had him on my list, but I haven't had to."
I'm not sure that I'm a good candidate for you. I've seen some, I've heard some good things. Bob Pardo is a good friend of mine.
Sure.
Here, most of them have some really what I'd call heroic events.
But not all of them.
They've been shot down. They've been prisoners of war. They've been sunk. So I've never had any.
Well, some of them are like that, but some of them is just their service. And your service, you will be the first, I believe, the only one that I have had that served in all three, that served in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. I've never had anybody. I've had World War II in Korea, and I've had Korea and Vietnam, but I don't think I've ever had anybody that was born at that precise time to where you, in your 40-year career, you served in all three conflicts.
I look at my record as being fairly undistinguished in all of that. I was lucky all the way through. Fortunate. The good Lord was with me. I came down here to school in 1942. I just graduated from high school. I came and started in June 1942.
Right.
Got off the farm, almost the furthest I'd ever been from home, except I had visited down here once before with the FFA judging contest.
Right.
And got dumped off and stayed here almost 3 semesters. I finished my freshman year, started the sophomore year, got credit for it in April that next year. As Barney was telling you the other day, I was in the same company. He was a sophomore and I was a fish that year. But during that time, I was all, as everybody was during that time, they were all eager to get with it. I don't know of anybody that shirked military duties, and almost everybody of any age from 18 to 35 or 36 was, if they didn't have something badly wrong with them, was in the military. So I was really eager to go in it. I wanted to go with the best, so I said, I'm going to join the Marine Corps.
Right.
So I joined the Marine Corps, and I'd already had some infantry training here. I knew rifles and a little bit of drill and all of this sort of stuff. And I thought, I got out, boot camp was a snap, and I thought, well, man, I'm going to get in a good infantry replacement draft or something here. DI called out, where you're going. He says, I'm going, Miller, go to radar school. I didn't even know what radar was. And I questioned him after. I said, did you get that right? Was it radar school or radar school? Oh, it's radar school. So I spent several months going to becoming a radar, radio technician, operator, and so forth. And then was assigned to the air wing. So I spent some time at Cherry Point, Camp Lejeune, then was shipped over and joined an aviation outfit. So I spent my World War II overseas in aviation. And I was a flyer as a ground. Being in that line of work was pretty good, because I got promoted. I made staff sergeant in a little less than 2 years. And then, so Okinawa was the only operation that I made, and I wasn't in any great danger there. I got a few shellings, and some of the Japanese landed on our airstrip one night and took out a few airplanes and control tower and stuff like that. But I was there at the end of the war, then went to Japan, spent a few months in Japan at the occupation forces, and came home, was discharged, came back to school the next fall.
Right.
Thought I was through with military service. Didn't join the Corps. Went ahead, graduated, took electrical engineering this time, got a degree in electrical engineering in 1949. And in the meantime, I had gotten married. My wife, who we now are approaching 60 years of marriage,
Wow.
we went to school together in first grade. Small little school up near Waco, out east of Waco, about 15 miles, a rural consolidated school. First grade probably had 15, 20 people. But we kind of parted ways about sixth grade and really didn't get back together until after World War II.
Right.
So, anyhow, we talked it over. We got married in '47 while I was still in school here. And we used to live in those old college view apartments over there for about a year plus. And we talked it over and I had a couple offers from industry that were about $200 a month, and the Marine Corps was paying $228 a month. And I said, well, why don't we go back to the Marine Corps and I can retire. By the time I'm 40 years old, and I can do something else. So we did. And that started my officer service.
Right.
Now, in order to cut, this is my headquarters Marine Corps official bio. I'll give you a copy.
Okay. Is it different than this one?
What does that one say?
This is an old one. This is when.
Well, let's see. The only thing that's different, I didn't know you had. Where did you get this one from?
That's one of the things that comes up if you Google General John H. Miller.
Oh, okay.
If you Google General John H. Miller, one of the things that comes up is that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, this is probably about.
It's probably a little bit more updated
well,
what you've got.
The only thing that's updated here is I updated the last part about my family.
Right. Good.
So, and I think the rest of it is probably the same, but take that and.
Okay.
But that's kind of.
Yeah, this was evidently written when you were in Norfolk, because it says he is commanding general.
Yeah. So
Fleet Marine Force.
Then what I did was go ahead after I
Retired there in '84
from FMF land. We lived there in North Carolina.
Right.
For about almost 8 years, something like that.
Right.
And I was perfectly happy there. I had a nice place to play golf. We had bought a house on the golf course. I played at the base with a bunch of friends. I played out at the country club with friends on the weekends and so. And had a lot of friends that were retired in that area, and I still knew a lot of the active duty people, and I could always go in and talk to the commanding generals and see what was going on and that sort of stuff. But Virginia always wanted to come back to Texas, so we came back. We had a son that lives in Houston, and we'd be down here frequently. So we came back here one day and looked around and bought this lot. And I thought, well, that takes care of it. Now I'll be settled for another 4 or 5 years before she'll say anything more about it. We hadn't got back to North Carolina before she said, hey, when are we going to start building? So we sold a place there. We had a place over in Lakeway at Austin that we bought a number of years earlier, condo, and we moved there for a year while they were building here. So that got us back here. Then our daughter, who was married to a Marine that was still on active duty.
Right.
He was due to retire on about 24, 25 years service, so they retired here. They live over in Southwood. She is a captain in the Navy Reserve, although she is now retired. She works at, she's a physical therapist over at St. Joseph's. And he is kind of in between jobs. He taught school for a while and so forth. But so that leaves us with most of the family here, except our son that had gone to West Point and spent several years in the Marine Corps. Then got out and worked in Baltimore for 20 or 25 years. Still lives in Baltimore, but he's about to move back down here. He's kind of between jobs, and he was teaching school, and so his family has all moved away. He's divorced, so he didn't have any other family. But he's going to move back down here and either get a job teaching school or working some industry outfit around Waco or something. So he's pretty well set.
Right. Right.
So that's basically, as you read through that, that's
Yeah.
where I've been.
Well, let's talk about Korea, because I guess that was
I guess that was my big war.
Yeah. Right.
Was Korea.
Right. And you earned a Purple Heart there.
I got 3 Purple Hearts,
3 Purple Hearts. So
And,
you were in a little bit of action.
a couple of Bronze Stars,
And you were also a member of the first wave that landed at
at Incheon.
Incheon. Yeah. Right.
At Incheon,
I read that.
I guess you'd say
Mr. Deathloff's book. Yeah.
Incheon was a complicated kind of an operation because the tidal waves and the mud flats, you could only get boats in, any kind of boats, LVTs or anything, at certain hours. So we had to land late in the afternoon. Now they had landed on a little island just off of Incheon early that morning, an outfit from the 5th Marines, but that kind of started the outfit, but then we were the first wave to go into the primary landing. And it was, I guess, it's basically a piece of cake. We moved through, and you were fighting the North Koreans then, and we had really outflanked them. You know, most of them were down in the southern part, down around the Pusan perimeter. So we went in and went. It wasn't all easy, but we went in and to Seoul. And I think in less than a week, 10 days at the most, they'd taken Seoul back, and then we went on north of there for a while, and then we're, you know, that's when MacArthur should stop the war, but he didn't. One unit went on up the west coast of North Korea, up into North Korea, and we were pulled out and went back around to Wonsan on the east coast, landed there. I spent several weeks or maybe a month or so up into a little crossroads that was between Wonsan and the North Korean capital, and then just to intercept North Vietnamese or North Koreans that were trying to get back into North Korea, and we had a number of good skirmishes. Then we were pulled out and went up to the Chosin Reservoir. Again, I had an easier time than some people. I was in the 1st Marine Regiment, and the 5th and 7th Marine Regiments were the ones that went up to a place called U Dam Ni on the west side of the reservoir, and got up there well ahead of us. We were at the foot of the reservoir, my battalion, just a place called Hagaroo, and they were probably 15, 20 miles further on up, and that's when the Chinese hit in many big masses and cut the roads and cut the road behind us to the next enclave, which we had another battalion and another battalion at the foot of the pass going up. So the guys that had the tough job were in the 5th and the 7th Marine. We had moved into Hagaroo and had an opportunity to set up a perimeter fence, very not a real good defense, but it was pretty complete. And so we had an easier time, even though we got every night we get some kind of a mass attack or something, and there was all sorts of things going on around us. The Army got shot up going up the east side of the reservoir, and they were pretty well decimated. So, but we survived, and at the time, you know, I don't think any of us were very worried. We had all the firepower we needed. We had the control of the air. We knew we were going to get out. It's just a matter of how
Right.
and what we'd have to fight on the way out. And I think a lot of people, including some of the senior Army officers, had basically said, "Hey, you guys just come on out, abandon your equipment and so forth, and get on out of there." But the Marine officer said, "We'll take our gear and we'll take our dead and we'll wounded and we'll come out."
Mm-hmm.
So we did. And again, you know, it was cold, 20 degrees below zero.
Right.
So it's not wasn't a pleasant atmosphere that you're in. So, but again, you know, the good Lord is with me. I guess, or else I could have been one of those guys up there with the 5th or 7th Marines, or I could have been killed right there where I was, or more seriously wounded. I've told a story. I wouldn't say this on the air or anything, but I went up with the battalion executive officer. I was a machine gun platoon leader.
Mm-hmm.
And as a machine gun platoon leader in this company, once I got my guns out and laid and so forth, which I had because we were in a defensive perimeter rather extended, I then would go back to the company commander and work, and our company commander was a very gung-ho guy. I would stay with him in his OP and assist in calling supporting arms and coordinating the naval gunfire if we had any. We didn't air and artillery and mortars and so forth. And I would kind of take charge of that. Well, they had to have some officer to go up with this battalion executive officer to take a hill that was overlooking the east part of the perimeter that the Chinese had. So I got volunteered to go assist him. I got up there and hadn't been there too long and got shot through the shoulder. And I said, I decided that might be my ticket to get back off that hill.
Mm-hmm.
So I went on back to battalion aid station. They had no place to send you, but they sent me back to my company. And the company commander says, "Hey, you're a little bit immobile here and in a little bit of discomfort." He said, "You stay in the CP tonight," which was 100 yards down the hill from where his OP was or less, and the battalion executive officer will come up with me and help me up on the OP.
Mm-hmm.
So we traded. At night, a round hit right in the hole where the company executive officer was and killed him.
Mm.
So how do you explain things like that?
Right.
That was my place.
Yeah.
And I may or may not have been in that hole. I may have been moving around some, but so.
Right.
But that's what I say. I wouldn't want to say anything like that.
Yeah.
But at any rate, we came out fine. Got back down to Ham Hung, loaded board ship, went down to Busan, regrouped, got replacements and so forth, and then went starring back up through the central part of Korea. And I finally got my third Purple Heart. Got near, about even with Seoul in the central part of Korea.
Mm-hmm.
And we were attacking up a hill, and suddenly I got hit by some mortar fire, and I got a round through the arm. I've forgotten which arm now. But I got hit right there with a fragment that broke all the bones in my face and caused me to lose the central vision out of that eye, which I have never regained. I would see it once that central nerve is gone, it's gone. So that ended my Korean experience, and after spending time in a hospital, and in the meantime I'd broken an arm. I didn't know it. I'd broken a bone in my wrist, and I got back to hospital, and they x-rayed and found that. And so I was evacuated to a hospital in Corpus Christi. stayed there for almost, well, about 10 months while the arm was trying to heal. And I went for a physical evaluation board, medical board, and so forth. And I said I wanted to stay in, and they decided to let me. I guess it's easier now than it was then. Then I had no idea that they'd let me stay in without the vision in my right eye, but they did. And so from that point on, the barracks at McAllister, Oklahoma for a year or so. Got into the guided missile program. I didn't even know the Marine Corps had a guided missile program until I got ordered there. That was the first surface-to-air missile that the Navy and Marine Corps developed.
Right.
Terrier missile they put on board ship, and we had 2 battalions at one time. And then I went to headquarters of the Marine Corps, was a guided missile officer and ordnance engineer for the G4 section, where I was instrumental, I think, sort of instrumental in buying the Hawk missile, which the Marine Corps still has. Right. And the Red Eye, which is was the predecessor of the shoulder-launched surface-to-air missile that you see now throughout the world, the Stinger, or what they call.
Was that when you were in California?
No, that was, I went to headquarters of the Marine Corps.
In Washington?
At Washington.
I see.
This was my first tour at headquarters of the Marine Corps as a major.
Right.
And I've been to headquarters or Washington. I've had four duties in Washington, four tours of duty. Went there as a major, then I went back as a colonel, and went back as a major general, and went back as a lieutenant general. So, after that, I was really long overdue to go back overseas because I got tied up. Well, I went to Naval Postgraduate School for 3 years after being in this missile unit at China Lake, and got a degree in engineering electronics, a master's degree. And then the headquarters of Marine Corps, and by this time I had one of the longest times in the States of any Marine major. So I was due to go back for an unaccompanied tour to Marines in Western Pacific. So after a 1-year tour in Pendleton, I was assigned to an infantry battalion, and we called them transplacement battalions at that time. You kind of got locked in, and you had the same guys and the same officers and so forth for a full tour. So we went to 3rd Marine Division on Okinawa, and spent a year there, between there, Japan at Camp Fuji, and the Philippines, and then we were in the group that deployed off Vietnam when they had the Gulf of Tonkin incident. We had a brigade, and our battalion was part of the brigade that went down and floated around off of Da Nang during that time, and that's the first time I got to go into Vietnam. Actually, we flew in there to see what it was like and so forth. We had a Marine helicopter unit in supporting the Vietnamese at Da Nang at that time. So, but then we were about due to come back to the States, so we were relieved, went back to Okinawa and came back to the States, and I was assigned then to duty at Fleet Marine Forces Pacific in Hawaii, which was in charge of all the Marines West Coast and Vietnam and Okinawa and so forth. So I spent 3 years there. And during that time, I guess I made probably 8 or 10, maybe more, trips to Vietnam, Korea, Okinawa, several trips back to the States, but mostly to Vietnam, because I was involved in the development of a logistics command that we were going to establish to support 2 Marine divisions and an air wing. But then I was about to miss Vietnam. I had been overseas just before Vietnam started. I come back and I don't have enough time in the States to get sent back to be in one of the divisions. So I come back, I go to 2nd Marine Division where I had an infantry battalion for a year. Through the good graces of my old friend Orm Simpson. He was division commander. And normally you'd spend a year on the staff before you get a chance to get a command.
Right.
I reported in, he says, I'm going to give you a battalion. I'm going to kiss you. So I got a battalion. And it was a good thing because I left after a year, went to the Army War College. Then I got to go back overseas. Then I knew I wasn't going to get any preferential treatment and get a battalion over there. So I asked to go into this Force Logistic Command, which I had been kind of the author of. And I commanded the headquarters and service squad, headquarters and service battalion, which was had about 3,000 troops, but most of them were operational to somebody else besides me, except I had charge of the security of a relatively large area. So I stayed there. Did get a full tour again. Got called out to go to Okinawa to be the Chief of Staff of Marine Corps Base Camp Butler, which was kind of a plum for me in a way. I didn't want to go, but I was a lieutenant colonel, had been selected for colonel, wasn't promoted, and the brigadier general, who was the general, had known me and we'd worked together at the FMF PAC, and he asked for me, so I went. I stayed there for 3 years, and learned a lot. We had charge of all of the facilities, all of the bases. Okinawa has about 6 or 7 different camps, so to speak, where Marines are located, and we were the landlord and had charge of the maintenance, construction, facilities, services, and so on. And I came back and I served a tour on the Army staff. I'm one of the few Marines that's ever been on the Army staff. Worked in the Office of Chief of Research and Development as a deputy to the guy in charge of development.
And this was back in Washington?
Back in Washington,
right.
At the Pentagon this time. And that was a great tour.
Yeah.
I got to meet and know a lot of Army officers. A lot of them I'd gone to the Army War College with, so it worked out well there for me. And then lo and behold, I got selected for Brigadier General. Now, I haven't done anything very spectacular up to this point, but I get selected in. And my first command was as a deputy at FMF Land, which was normally a senior two-star general, but they didn't have anybody to send. So the assistant commandant, who was kind of running things at that time, wanted to be sure that we held the quarters down there. So he sent me down there to be the deputy. And I was there for a year.
That was at Camp Lejeune?
No, this was at Norfolk.
Oh, Norfolk, okay.
Yeah. And then I went to Camp Lejeune as the CG of what was then Force Troops, which later did away with Force Troops and became Force Troops 2nd Force Logistic Command, which was again a relatively large organization for a Brigadier General. I think I had about 10,000, maybe 8,000 troops of all different kinds, including a number of combat units like the Tank Battalion, the LVT Battalion, which is the Amtracs, had Recon, I had the Anglico, I had a bunch of those guys, as well as engineers, motor transport, maintenance, supply, and all of this. So it was an interesting tour, but here again, I only got to stay there a little over a year. And I go back to headquarters Marine Corps to be the Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations and Training. And then I stayed there for 2 years, and then they sent me to, I got sent to Quantico to be the CG at Quantico. And that was kind of an interesting arrangement. I was still a major general. We were limited then with the number of general officers and the number of lieutenant generals that we have. Well, Quantico was lieutenant general's billet, but the commandant at that time, Lou Wilson, wanted a external billet to the Marine Corps at the lieutenant general level.
Mm-hmm.
So he saw that he could get the J3 of the Joint Staff, but he didn't have another 3-star to do it. So he said, "Okay, John, you go to Quantico as a 2-star, and we'll send this other guy over to the Joint Staff. He's already on the Joint Staff, and they'll accept him as the 3-star." We were trying to get into the inter-service business more than we were, which was good. And so I stayed down there as a 2-star for a year, and then got promoted to 3 stars later on while I was there. That's an interesting tour, because Quantico, of course, is kind of the crossroads of the Corps. Every Marine, second lieutenant goes to Quantico. Every Marine except NOTCs goes to OCS, and there's a commission as a result of OCS, except the Naval Academy and the ROTC, ROTC. And all of them go to basic school, and basic school is usually, we've run around, and they still are, around 1,800 lieutenants through basic school every year. Classes run about 6 months, and they're kind of overlap, so forth through there. So it was interesting there. In addition to that, of course, you have the Command and Staff College, which is the major level, and you have what we then called the Amphibious Warfare School, which was the captain level, Communication Officer School, and all of that on the education side. And then you had the Development Center, which did all of the development for the Marine Corps, all the equipment, and also wrote most of the doctrinal type publications. So I had a great tour. I had a couple of really superb generals there that worked for me. One was Mick Traynor. I don't know if you've ever heard of Mick Traynor. He came down here and gave a presentation last fall on a book that he had written. He's been a military correspondent for some of the newspapers, worked in the Harvard Center up there. He's now retired, but he and another guy wrote a big book on the Iraqi War, on the initial thing. So anyhow, but Mick had the Education Center, and Al Gray, who later became Commandant of the Marine Corps, had the Development Center. So I just had to adjudicate between keeping from fighting, and so it was a great tour. I was there for a couple of years, and then went back to Headquarters Marine Corps as the Deputy Chief of Staff for Plans, Policies, and Operation.
Right.
Might seem odd that operations appears twice there, but that was because of a little reorganization of the staff. And then, so I stayed there for a couple of years. We lived at 8th and Iowa there by the Commandant's house, and nice little square. They have about 4 sets of quarters there. That's where they have the evening parade and on Friday nights. And everybody comes down and have a lot of entertainment and so forth. But again, that was an interesting tour. I was the OpDep for the Marine Corps, which means that I sat in the meetings with the Joint Chiefs of Staff several times a week. And then besides that, then the OpDeps, the 3 stars from each of the service, met separately. And basically, if we could resolve the issue, it was resolved. And if it not, then we pass it on to the chiefs. But we were usually there during their discussion too. So this was an interesting tour, but I was just as glad to get out of there. And then I got assigned to back a CG of FMF Land.
Right.
And I guess the biggest heartache I had at FMF Land was the losing 241 Marines and sailors in that terrorist attack in Beirut.
Right.
And I was there just a couple of weeks, or maybe 3 weeks before that. I didn't see anything wrong with their disposition and the way they were set up, nor did anybody else that had been out there. And I did visit, I guess I went into Beirut about, during the 2 years I was there, probably about 6 times. And visited, we rotated units every 6 months, so some of them I'd visit twice, some of them I'd visit just once. But that was the biggest,
Yes, sir.
I'd say, heartache. I think about it still, you know, that happened October 1983. Just think of all those young men.
Right.
That is, what, 24 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
They would be in their 40s now.
Mm-hmm.
Really a tragic thing. It happened in a way that it happened, and but this has happened other places too. We learned a lesson, but that's a tough lesson, tough way to learn a lesson.
Sure.
So then I retired.
In 84.
Right there at 80, in 31 August, 1st of September 1984, and turned over my command FMF Lant to this General Al Gray that I was telling you about, that later became a commandant. We still call each other every once in a while. I just went to pasture. I stayed there and played golf. I did work for a friend of mine up in Washington as a consultant, but I didn't want to get in the business of opening the doors for contractors to go in and talk to old Marine friends and so forth. I said, I don't want to do that. So I kind of worked other things. I worked with the Swiss government, did a kind of a 5-year plan for them as to their armed forces. Swiss have pretty good armed forces.
Mm-hmm.
They have, you know, universal conscription.
Right.
And so I don't know what they're worried about, but at that time they were still, Russia was still,
Right.
USSR was still making noises.
Yeah. Now you lived in North Carolina though, right? After you retired.
Once I retired, I lived right there in Jacksonville, North Carolina, until we moved back to Texas.
Did you move straight to here from
No,
North
well,
Carolina?
we moved over to, we had bought back in about 1980, around 1980, we bought a condo
in Lakeway.
at Lakeway,
In Austin.
overlooking Lake Travis.
Right.
Beautiful little place.
Right.
And we had never been there. We'd gone by there and looked at it and so forth, and we'd never lived it. So we finally got it paid for, and we said, hey, we'd make it a place where we can go spend a vacation. So we said our son and his family down in Houston used it several times. But then she got ready to move, and kind of pushed me on the end of all this. We just picked up and moved there, kept our house in North Carolina, and with all the furniture and so forth, until we could build here. And we had a young youth director from the church. We asked him to live in it and take care of it for us.
Mm-hmm.
So we just then went back, packed up the furniture, and had it moved down here.
Mm-hmm. So you've lived here about 10 years?
About 10 years. 10
Right.
years this, probably May.
Yeah. Wow, I guess so. I guess Virginia got used to you saying we're moving again, right?
Well, I've counted up one time. From the time we were married until we moved here, I think this was our 37th move.
Wow. 37.
And we've never been any place as long as well, even in North Carolina, we moved one because we bought one house and then decided to buy another house on the other side of the golf course and fix it up, an older house, bigger house. And so we're this is the longest we've ever lived any place by a factor of 2.
Mm-hmm.
And in the military, the longest we ever lived any place was 3 years.
Right. Yeah. But that's
kind of
that's the game,
and,
though.
and most of the time it was, as I say, 1 year or 1.5 or something like that, and you're going again. So
yeah.
I don't know if any of that. I've been doing all the talking. You didn't even ask
No,
me
yeah,
questions.
that's what's supposed to happen. No, you told me the story, and we'll condense it some when we do this tomorrow. By the way, 2:30 is just fine if that's okay with you.
Where is it?
Okay, it's on campus. It's KAMU. It is, when you go into campus off of George Bush on Houston Street, that's right where the former students building is. That's that street that goes right in there, just a block off of Welborn. In other words,
Go in there, go in.
Yeah, right there where the former students building is, that street right there. You just drive into campus right on that street, that one that goes right up by the east side of Kyle Field. And it's a one-story building that's right on your left when you go into campus.
How far in there?
It's the first one-story building that you'll see when you turn right there on Houston Street going to campus.
By the foundation?
Yeah. That street that's between the foundation building and the former students building, that's Houston Street. You just turn on into that street.
Yeah, but how far is it from the foundation?
Well, you just beyond the foundation building on that street. You don't drive in there where the foundation is, where you park to go to the foundation. Just stay on that main street, Houston Street, and it's a one-story building. It's the very first one that you get to when you come on
Will it be parking there?
You go around the back of that building. In other words, right after you pass that building, you turn left.
Yeah.
And that'll take you right to the back of that building, and you'll park behind the building.
Okay.
It's called KAMU.
I could go down and park at the garage, but then I have to walk back.
Yeah, no, don't do that.
I could go park in the foundation lot.
You can do that if you wanted to and walk, but there'll be parking places for you behind KAMU.
Oh, okay.
It's right there.
2:30.
Yeah, 2:30 if that's okay. And what we do is, you've seen the show. You're sitting in a chair, I'm sitting in a chair, and we're talking just pretty much like we are right now. And we go for about 28 minutes, and I'll just sort of lead you along, and when I'm ready to jump to another subject, I'll jump in, and we'll just jump to something else, and we just talk for about 30 minutes. Yeah, I'll lead it.
But
I'll lead it, and you talk it.
And I don't know if I hope this would be.
Well, I want to talk about about your service. Obviously, we can't get into as much specifics as we had today. I'd like to talk about, to the extent that you want to, about obviously Korea and your Purple Hearts and the action involved there, and about just your different services and moving so many times, and might even start off by talking about what A&M was like in the 1940s and what the school was like and things like that.
Did you ever read you knew Arm Simpson, didn't you?
I didn't know him personally, but I know who he is, sure.
Did you ever read his remarks, his write-up as what A&M was like when he went to A&M?
I don't think so.
I'll loan you a copy. I'll loan you my copy. My only copy.
I'll bring it to you tomorrow. Yeah.
Also, I got a package. I just put a couple of things in here from General Simpson. I got some other letters from him.
Yeah.
But he gave the remarks at an Aggie muster, and sometimes about in the 1980s or so. Oh, I didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, quit that! He gave the remarks in Aggie muster, which you ought to read. it's one of his favorite topics, integrity, but he got into it in a very neat way. Let me get that for you. Maybe if you maybe have time to read it before I see you tomorrow.
Sure.
If not, you bring it to me.
Sure.